she's going to have to leave real quick after finishing her talk because she has to be at work at 9:30 in Durham. She's supervisor of a home for kids who are in trouble, and it's imperative that she be there. So,
I am an alcoholic, and my name is Harriet. I always start my talks off the same way. I simply pray and I ask God to use me to say something to somebody that would help in any way. I used to, when I first started talking, I would write things down, and then it got to the place where I would just move out of the way and let what comes out is what God wants somebody to hear, hopefully. I grew up in a home that was very religious. We had to go to church every time the doors opened. My dad was the lead deacon in the Baptist church. We didn't have a television. The only thing on the radio you could listen to was gospel music. In my mom's house, you couldn't drink root beer because they had the word beer in it. In my mom's house, you could not drink eggnog because in her mind, everybody put white lightning in eggnog. But it was a very loving home, so alcohol was not a problem. In my home, I was not around alcohol when I was coming up. No, that's a lie. That's not the truth. I was around alcohol. And in my head, it was in church. I go to church, and every second Sunday, they'd have communion, and I would sit there, and I would listen to them say, this bread represents, the body, and this wine. And my head just stuck on this wine. And I wanted to see what it tasted like. But to taste it, you had to be a member of the church. And so that was my only reason for joining the church, so I could taste the wine. Then once you became a member of the church, you could join the junior usher board, and as a member of the junior usher board, you could serve the wine. They had these little containers, with the little glasses in them, and you pass it out, and at the end of service, you're supposed to go back and pick up the little empty containers, but there was always some left over. And I would sit down behind the back pew, and drink as much as I could by myself until one of my brothers caught me. I feel that I came by this disease. I see it as a disease, and I feel I got it honestly. My dad had 15 brothers and sisters, and of his 15 brothers and sisters, probably 12 died in alcohol-related death. On my mom's side of the family, her dad died in alcohol-related death. My mom had 3 brothers and a sister. All 3 of her brothers died in alcohol-related death. In my immediate family, I was affected with this disease, and I'm thankful. And I have a brother who died from this disease. My father died as a result of alcoholism. And I often pray and I say, God, I just want to thank you for giving me this gift, because that's what I see it as today. And I don't know why some people are chosen and, some are not. But I just know today that I am truly thankful that I was one of the blessed ones to receive this new way of life. I always felt like I was different. If I'd walk in a room and you would bust out laughing, the committee in my head would tell me they're laughing at you. And I'll tell you about my committee in my head. Y'all like my little horns up here? Okay, tell you real quick about these little things. Okay, at the church I go to, we have a group called the Keenagers, K-E-E-N, those 55 and older. So we went down to Edenton, North Carolina about a month or so ago for a dinner and a musical, and I had my little horns on. And so the bus driver said, you need to shave those horns down a little bit before you come to church tomorrow. So I told him, I said, look, when you see them right here, you know that me and the committee in my head, you know that we're okay. But if you see them up here, somebody better watch out. I tell people, I don't know about you, but I know I got a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde inside of me. Last night, a co-worker and I were talking about getting married again. I said, girl, I am so scared. I said, because when I meet somebody, I want you to like me, and I want you to see that better half, but I know there's another one in there. And today I was in the Dollar Tree and the lady was saying how some lady made some off the wall remark last night to her. She said I was looking at that lady and she said, I just smiled and I said, lady, if this had only been 10 years ago, it would have been on. And again, I'm just so thankful because the Harriet that you see standing here is not the Harriet that suffered for many years from the disease of alcoholism. I grew up, my dad left my mom, and I say that he left her with 5 babies because the oldest one was like 10 and the youngest one was about 6 months old. My grandfather was, pretty well off. But when my mom and dad got married, he built them a little house and stuff. But when my dad left, he told my mom he wanted her to get out of his house. So you can imagine what life was like for us. My mother had never worked. She went on welfare, and I remember clearly. I don't know, somebody in here may remember, the welfare lady would come, you had to hide the TV and hide the telephone and stuff. That's the stuff that we went through. But I remember the day she came and she told my mom that she was going to have to give some of us up or they were going to have to cut her welfare. My mama, God gave me a good mama. My mama said, you just do what you have to do, but I'm not giving any of my babies away. And so life became really, really hard for us. But God made a way. And for that, I am truly grateful. But I always would look at the people down the street. They had this brick home. In my head, it was just massive. And I wanted to be their little girl. I dreamed, that I was their little girl. And I had all the nice clothes and things that I wanted. And if I'd go, I heard a speaker one time from Texas, and he was saying that for him, alcoholics, we always get things backwards. If we just do the opposite, we'll be okay. He said, go to bed wide awake, wake up sleepy, go to the funeral, want to be the corpse, go to the wedding, want to be the bride. And when I heard that, I said, yep, that's exactly how I felt. I always wanted to be somebody else. Always wanted to be somewhere else other than where I was. I always wanted to travel, but because we were so poor, I felt that, and I knew the only way that I could travel to places in the world was through reading. So I became an avid reader, and I'm still an avid reader today. But I could read, and I could go and visit all these places, in my head, and I was always a loner, sit somewhere on a rock. They had these big rocks that come up out of the ground throughout the United States. So we had these big, massive rocks in the backyard. So I'd sit out there on the rocks, and read and just go away. And I always felt like if I could just get out of my mama's house, go away to school, everything is going to be okay. This time it's going to be different. And so when I went away to school, I started drinking on Friday nights. I went to ECU because on Friday nights they'd have parties in the basement of the boys' dormitory, and they'd drink Boone's Farm or put the Boone's Farm in the punch and stuff. And so I never drank, but because everybody else was doing it, I started drinking just a little bit too, and I did not have a problem then. And so when I graduated, I met a girl who was in high school, and I was my freshman year at college. She was an only child. So her mom and dad told me, said, oh, you don't have to live on campus, come and live with us and we'll do for you just like they did for her. Gave me a car to drive and everything. So, somebody coming from the background that I came from, this was great thing. And so, but when she left, when she graduated high school, she moved to Durham. And so when I finished ECU, I moved to Durham. And what we were going to do, we were going to wait for her to graduate. Then we were going to move to Denver, Colorado and stay for a little while because I always wanted to see the Rocky Mountains. And then after we left Denver, Colorado, we were going to move to San Francisco and stay for just a little while. And I used to say that I got stuck because Durham is called the Bull City. And I said, yeah, after my disease picked up, I said, yeah, that's exactly what it is, a bunch of bull. But I know today they call it Bull City because of the tobacco. And there was a man riding on a bull, and that's how Durham became known as the Bull City. And I moved to Durham to stay 1 year and been there ever since. But today I know that Durham is not the problem. I carry the problem, inside of me. Things got so bad, I started teaching school, and things picked up, and I started dating a guy that was a gambler, and I would give him my paycheck because he's going to turn it over. This time he's going to make a lot of money, and this month it's going to be different. And every month the bills, were not getting paid. We'd end up fussing and fighting. One night I ran out of my house and walked barefooted over 2 miles to a friend's house because of a fight that we had had. That next morning he came over and I was scared. I hid up under the bed. And so he said, I know she's here. I'm not going to hurt her. I just want to talk to her. So I came out. And so he said, come on, let's go to the house. And so he said, I did something last night. I know you're not going to forgive me for it. So I said, what'd you do? Set the house on fire? So he said, no. I said, what'd you do? Cut up all my clothes? So he said, why you say that? We get to the house and I open the door and he had. And I don't know why stuff comes to me like that sometimes, but it does. And he had cut up everything I owned during the night. What was left was the piano, the knives, the forks, the stove, and the refrigerator. I didn't even have a clean pair of underwear. I used to say drawers. I think y'all might not know what some drawers are. But I didn't have a clean pair of drawers to wear to work. I had to borrow some from a friend. I never called my mama because my mama always had this saying, and my mama always told us that you always remember nobody's going to ever love you like your mama. And I know some people come from other situations, but that's what my mom said. And so I never wanted to call her because I wanted my mama to be proud of me. I wanted to be somebody. I was the first one to go away to school. The people I associated in Durham were like professors at the university, lawyers, city councilmen, and so forth. And I studied how to mix drinks because all I wanted was a liquor cabinet and with different wines. So when you come to my house, I could ask you, what would you like to drink? And then I could stir it up for you. So I had the alcohol and everything else just because it got to the place that if I saw you coming, if you drank more than I did, I'd hide, hide my alcohol and, and my beer. And one thing I forgot to tell you about, I always wanted to be somebody else. I always wanted, when my mom got a TV for us, there was this program used to come on called Sky King. Some of you may remember Sky King. Sky King had a niece named Penny. Penny had everything. And Penny had long hair. She had this ponytail, hanging down the back. And she just swing that ponytail. And I wanted a ponytail too, but I didn't have no Penny hair. My hair was up to about right here. It wasn't growing any longer than that. And so what I do, I take my sweater and button my sweater around my head and let the sleeves hang down, and swing them like I had some hair. But today, I got some hair today. And so, but the thing about this hair is, as long as it's ever been, and people, is that yours? I said, yes. Oh, but did you buy it at a store? No, this is mine. So, but today I got that penny hair. But I always thought that if it was this way, then that's what would be the thing that would change my life. That would be exactly what I needed. It never worked out like that. And so back to Durham, that day when I walked in and the guy had cut up everything I owned, I did something I said I would never do. I called my mama. I hated making that telephone call, but I knew that if I was to get any help, that my mama would be the one that would help me. And my mama always had this saying, leave them alone and they'll come home, dragging their tails behind them. And I never wanted to have to hear my mama say that. She didn't say it. She told me, she said, I'll send your brothers to Durham for you. My mother sent my 2 brothers to Durham, packed me up, moved back to Wake County. I stayed there exactly 2 weeks. I was right back in Durham drinking, doing the very same things that I had done before I left. But except this time, things had gotten just a little bit worse. That was the first night I was on the verge of having to sleep in my car. The only thing that kept me from sleeping in my car, I called a friend, the one that gave me some underwear to wear to work. And so she told me, she said, you don't have to sleep in your car. You come over, and she said, you can stay with me and wear my clothes until, I always thought if the next paycheck comes, then it's going to be different. So I said, all I need to do is just wait to get my paycheck, and then I'll be okay. So my birthday rolled around, September the 25th. And my mama did something that morning she had never done in life. Always on my birthday at 6 o'clock in the morning, I knew my mama was going to call me and say happy birthday. She didn't call me that morning. Maybe she didn't know where I was, come to think of it. But either way, I didn't get a call from my mama. So I called a friend, snot just slinging her boo. What's wrong? My birthday, my mama didn't call me. So he said, you don't have to sit over there by yourself. You come over here. Because he didn't have any legs. So he said, so you got a car. And he said, we can put our monies together. And he said, you go to the store and get a 6-pack. You know, and he said, come on back. So I went over his house. We put our monies together, got enough for a 6-pack. And I went to the store and I was at the stop sign. And I heard somebody, here, come here. So I looked and it was the girl that I stay with. She said, I got somebody I want you to meet. So she introduced me to this guy. And so found out it was my birthday. So he gave me some Jim Beam to drink. I hated that stuff then. And when I quit drinking, still hated it. But I drank it because I didn't have nothing else. And so that night, my friend, I taught school during the day, and she worked at the hospital at night. That night, the man called me. And I told him, I said, look, I don't do stuff like this behind nobody's back, especially no friends. So he said, yeah, I don't go with her. You know, we just friends. He said, all I want to do is just take you out to eat. That was like on a Monday night. So Tuesday night, he called me again. Wednesday night, I was real hungry by then, so I said yes. So he picked me up. I met him, and we went over to Raleigh, to Red Lobster there on 70. And that was the first time in my life I had a measure of honesty. I wasn't stupid. I ain't tell him everything. Honesty with someone. This man had 4 girls that he raised by himself for 12 years. And then I was in this situation, so I told him about the guy cut up all my clothes and stuff. So he said, you don't have to wear somebody else's clothes. So he said, he reached in his pocket and gave me some money. He said, you go buy you some clothes tomorrow. And if that ain't enough, you come on back. And I was and we hadn't even held hands. And I don't know what kind of friends you had. The friends I was used to running with, if you needed to ride across town, I ain't got no gas. You got some gas money, you know? And I had never run into somebody that had what I know today is unconditional love, you know, for me. So my friends and I, we went out and had a real good time that night. But I did buy a few clothes the next day. And so he told me, he said, you don't have to stay at her place. Go find your apartment. I'll pay for it. And I'll buy the furniture to go in there. And so I waited because I thought he was lying to me. Because all my life I had run into these so-called friends. Nobody I could ever trust. It just lie. That's all it was. I probably lied to them too, couldn't think of it. But that's the way it was. But this man did for me, God used him to do for me what I could not do for myself. That was that Saturday, 3 days after that Wednesday, this man asked me to marry him. And I told him, I said, you just stupid, just purely stupid. Because he didn't know what Harriet was all about. So a few weeks later, he kept on asking me. So a few weeks later, the little committee in my head said, girl, you better say yeah, because you know you can get a diamond and you can pawn it if you want to. So I said yes. All my life I said I ain't never wanted no husband, never wanted any kids. It was just going to be me and God. Because I've always felt that the husband would always leave you and you'd end up crying at night over your kids. Because I would wake up at night and hear my mama crying over my brother who suffered from, you know, alcoholism and drug addiction, just like she probably cried many nights over me. So I didn't want to have to go through that. That Thanksgiving, he told me, he said, we went to my mom's house for Thanksgiving, and then going to December, I said, he told me, he said, I'm not going to ask you to marry me anymore. So I said, well, okay. So January, we went down to South Carolina and we got married, and this man did not drink, and he was not a drinker. I drank until it was no more. But for him, he liked Jim Beam, and so he would pour about that much in a glass, and then a great big glass of Pepsi Cola or something. He'd swallow that alcohol and drink all that Pepsi down. And he'd set his bottle in the cabinet on the shelf till the next weekend or something. You know, I don't understand stuff like that. And my sister, for example, does not suffer from this disease. She would fly, and she would come back with those little bottles, you know, they give you on the airplane. And when she moved from a trailer into a house, she had these little bottles with dust on it. You know, that's foreign. That's foreign to me. And So, but with my husband, I drink my bottle, drink it all gone, and so then the committee in my head said, girl, go on in there and get some of his, and then put some water in the bottle, you know. So I drink some of his, and I put water in there to make it come back up to where I thought it was. And then one day I just said, oh man, just forget it, I'm gonna drink the whole thing. So I drank it all, because I said, I'll get some money, because one of his friends, so-called friends, got this brilliant idea and told him that what he needed to do was cut the money. And so he cut the money and would give me $1 a day to spend, and want to know what I spent the dollar on. And so that day when I decided to drink all of his, the committee in my head said, it looks like vinegar, just pour vinegar back in his bottle. And so that's what I did. But I did it with the intentions, I won't gonna let the man drink it, y'all. But I did it with the intentions of, I get some money from somewhere by Friday, you know, and fill it back up again. I stole from my husband. I lay in bed at night and wish, God, let him have to go pee. Let him get up and go pee. Because when he go pee, I reach my hand in his pocket and lights. I don't know how much money I pull out, you know, just handful. So he tells somebody, he said, man, this is, I work all week and end up at the end of the week with less than you started out with. But not one time did my husband ever accuse me. I broke into my husband's place of business, stole the whole cash register drawers, took the money out, threw the little drawer thing in the gutter. And we had this dog. And so a friend came and asked her, and I'm standing there, you know, looking right stupid. And the friend said, man, you got any idea who broke in here? So he said, no, but it had to be somebody that the dog knew, because we were the only ones that could get around the dog. But my husband never pointed his finger or accused me of anything. So when the money, and I'd sign his name on checks and then go down the road and wait for the mailman, you know, by the time the bank statements would come, you know, so I could get the bank statement so he wouldn't have to see them. And so one day somebody told me about this crime, and it was so easy. And so we did it and got this money and did it some more and some more. And then one day, one guy got real greedy. He wanted more than what I was willing to give him. And he said, well, if you don't give me some more money, he said, I'm going to go tell your husband what you're doing. And I said, you can do what you want to do. Because I didn't think my husband was a big man. My husband didn't play when it came to his girls or to me, and I didn't think nobody had enough nerve to go tell my husband something on me, but this guy did. My husband came home and he said, what do you know about such and such? And I was my usual, there you go again, always accusing me of something. I don't know what you're talking about. And he said, that's okay. He said, before it's all over with, you will know what I'm talking about. About 4 months later, I'm with my husband at his place of business, and I see these 2 detective cars pull up, so I got real good at knowing what a police car looked like. And so they came busting up in the place, and so when I saw them pull up, I told him, I said, you know what you asked me about? He said, yes. I said, I do know something about it. So by the end, they were all in the place. So he said, just go on downtown with them, and he said, it'll be okay. He said, tell them what they want to know. I ain't no problem to me, because all the other stuff I had gotten into, my husband would just get on the telephone, call the lawyer, and it was taken care of. I ain't have to go to no court or nothing. So, okay, let's go. We're going downtown. I'll answer your question, because I knew my husband was going to take care of it. So I'm sitting there waiting and waiting. And my husband had this habit. He never spent change. And he always had his keys in his pocket, so when he'd walk, you know, he'd had his hand in his pocket, and I could hear his keys or the change jiggling in his pocket. And he did not come to get me. And years before, my family, my 2 brothers and my sister had come to Durham, and they had told me, they said, you need to go away and get some help for yourself. And I thought my oldest brother always wanted to be somebody's daddy. I thought he just wanted to lock me up somewhere so that he could tell them, you know, when to let me out. So they told me, they said they heard there was a place in Richmond and there was a place in Atlanta where I could go and get some help for myself. So I figured if my husband wanted to stick with me or come and visit me, that Richmond would be easier for him than for him to have to get on a plane and fly to Atlanta, considering his business. So when I went home from the police station, and I knew I had run it in the ground with my husband, I sold everything in the house. They had I pawned everything. They had a drop cord on it. Any jewelry I had, I took it to the pawn shop. He went and got my stuff back like 3 times, and the third time, well, before the third time was, I had these hoop earrings. And so he came in the house. He said, where is your ring? There it is right there. Can't you see? So he said, why don't I see the diamond? I said, I'm losing weight and it's rolling around on my finger. So he said, well, why don't you roll it back around and let me see it? And of course, right foolish, because I had pawned it again. So he went to the pawn shop, and when he came home, he said, I'm not going to give them back to you until I feel assured that you are going to stay sober. But when I came home from the police station that day, I got on the phone and I called Richmond operator, and I told her, I said, ma'am, somebody told me I could get some help in your city. And so she said, hold on. And so this was on a Tuesday. So she said, we have intake on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She said, we have one this coming Thursday and the following Tuesday. So I said, well, give me next Tuesday, because I figured I could run the streets just a little bit more. And then I told her before we hung up, I said, ma'am, you better give me Thursday, because if I wait till Tuesday, I probably would have changed my mind. And I felt I needed to go away because I was looking at 20 years in women's prison. And the lawyer had already told me that. And I felt that if I went away to treatment, the judge would say, oh, how good she's doing, and feel sorry for me and give me a break. So I went to treatment, and I was thinking I was going to a place to lay up in the bed and they bring me my food every day. And it wasn't like that. You had to sweep the floor, help cook the food, get the mail in, sweep the sidewalk. And you had to go to these AA meetings. And the AA meetings were 52 long blocks away. I know, because I counted every last one of them. If you were in the first 30 days of program, and I thought it was going to be like 28 days, come home. And they told me, they said, no, ma'am. So this program is based on 6 months to a year's completion. So if you were in the first 30 days, you had to walk on Sunday morning to the AA meeting. So, and they told us that by the time you come back in this house from the second AA meeting, you better have a sponsor. So I went, and it was at the Holiday Inn in the conference room at the convention center part of the Holiday Inn in the 5200 block of Broad Street in Richmond. They had ushers at the door, men with suits and ties on. So I sat at the back table because that was near the cookies. And they had soft drinks there, and they wouldn't let us have sugar at the place. So I sat back there. But by the second meeting, I told the man, they told me, I can't. Before I come back, I got to have a sponsor. So he introduced me to this lady who at that time had 18 years of sobriety, and she did for me what I do for ladies that I sponsor. She bought me my first big book. She bought me Living Sober. And then she also bought me some books that are no longer conference approved, so they are no longer sold at the meeting. Books like Tools for Fools. And I'm thinking, who she thinks she is? Trying to call somebody a fool. But the books helped me greatly. So I went back, and I was there almost 4 months, and my husband was insisting that I come home, but I knew I still had to face those charges. I had gone to enough AA meetings on Sunday morning and with my sponsor that I knew what program was about. When I went to my first meeting, the only thing I remember was the cookies and the drink. This man was really tall, and he read this poem, and this is what he said. I asked God for strength that I might achieve. I was made weak that I might learn humbly to obey. I asked for health that I might do greater things. I was given infirmity that I might do better things. I asked for riches that I might be happy. I was given poverty that I might be wise. I asked for power that I might have the praise of men. I was given weakness that I might feel the need of God. I asked for all things that I might enjoy life. I was given life that I might enjoy all things. I got nothing that I asked for, but everything I hoped for. Almost despite myself, my unspoken prayers were answered. I am among all men most richly blessed. And that was written by an unknown Confederate soldier. But when I heard that, I thought, that's exactly how I feel. Those are the things that I wanted in life. Those were the things that I got out of life. And things began to change for me. So at 4 months, my husband was insisting that I come home. And I went to my sponsor and I told her, I said, he's insisting that I come home. And so she said, if you go back to Durham and you go to 90 meetings in 90 days and you do everything that they tell you to do, she said, you're going to be okay. So I came back to Durham. And in 90 days, if there were 2 meetings every day, I went to 2 meetings every day. Not because I wanted the judge to have pity on me, because I love this program so much. It was drilled into me. We'd go to conventions like Wallace was talking about. If we heard of an anniversary meeting, we'd take off and we'd all go there together. And when my court case came up, I stood before that judge over in Raleigh, and by then I had worked the steps to the best of my ability. Dot Hannah, many of you know her, who died almost a year ago. January the 1st will be a year, was my sponsor, and so she drilled the steps into me. She always taught me as far as giving service and why I am here tonight. She said your answer should always be yes, if it's within your power. So when Wallace called, I picked up the phone. Harriet Brinkley, we want you to come down. My answer was yes, I will be there, regardless of the fact that I have to go work 10 hours tonight. I knew that I had a responsibility because you were there for me, with hands out to help me when I could not do for myself. I stood before that judge and he said, I remand you to the custody of women's prison for a period of not less than 5 years. And then he said suspended. By that time, when my court case came up, I told the judge if he felt it was necessary for me to go to prison to make amends for what I had done, I was willing to go. I used to say I paid all that money back. I didn't pay it. My husband paid it back, honestly. But the judge said suspended. So I was placed on probation, supervised probation. If the probation officer said, be in my office at 10 o'clock, I was there at 9:59. If she said, I'm coming by your house on Wednesday at 1 o'clock, I was sitting on the porch at 12:45. Waiting for her. The 50th anniversary came up shortly after that in Montreal, Canada. I wanted to go, but because I was a convicted felon, I lost all my rights and I wasn't supposed to leave the country. My probation officer went to the judge and petitioned on my behalf that I be allowed to go out of the country. So he told me, he said, I'm going to take you off probation. He said, you go to this convention. He said, but when you hit that American border, he said, you better stop and call her. And he said, when you get to the North Carolina border, you better stop and call her again. I did what the man told me to do. Something happened, my probation officer said, that has never happened in history. I was on probation for 6 months, and that same judge signed all orders releasing me from any restraints. But I know that it was simply because I had worked this program to the best of my ability and tried to give back. That day when I was in my probation officer's office, she was crying. She said, I hate to see you go. And I was like, girl, you crazy. But we stayed in touch, for many years. I got involved in church. My home group meets on Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, and on Friday night. I was afraid to tell my sponsor that I wanted to get back into church. But she told me, she said, as long as you're doing something to improve yourself spiritually, she said, you would never get a complaint, out of me. So on September the 19th, 1992, we had church then on Saturday night. So I went to church and we got out early, something that has never happened. And so I said, well, if I go home early now, then my husband will say, look, you can come home at 8 o'clock, tonight. You can come home tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. So I drove around. I got home at my normal time. And my husband was sitting in the truck. And in the truck were two individuals with my husband. My husband owned a towing service. And so the first thing I thought, I said, I know this man ain't stupid enough to be bringing a woman to my house. But it wasn't. It was two guys. And so I walked up to the truck. My husband handed me the cell phone. For those of you who don't know, cell phones used to look like this. Am I right? And so he reached over, he turned the light on because we'd always reach for the phone, knock it in the floor, so we got in the habit of reaching up and turning the light on. He turned the light on and said, that's how I saw the two guys, saw what they looked like more clearly. And so he said, take the phone in the house and bring me my thing. And I knew his thing was his gun. And he said, because I have to go down to McDougal Terrace to a car for them. And he said, anything can happen down there. So I came back, I gave him the gun, and we kissed as we always did, always when we left each other. And I went in the house, and we had a little promotion for the kids on the Sunday school bus, and it was supposed to be like, who's the first preacher? And I was like, I don't even know my own self, so I sit down and try to figure out what the answer is. And so I looked over at the microwave, and 25 minutes had gone by. And don't ask me why I did it, but I got up and I called 911, and I said, I want to report a missing person, because I knew it should not have taken him no more than 25 minutes. And my husband, if he said he was going to Walmart, he went to Walmart and came straight back home. If I went to Walmart and I wanted to stop at Kroger's, he would expect me to stop and call and say, I need to stop at Kroger's. And I used to say, oh, you just want to keep up with me, know where I'm going all the time. He said, no, I don't. He said, because he said, I want to know where you are, so if something happens, I will know where to start looking for you. And that paid off that night. So they sent this police officer by, so he was saying, what color, what he looked like. And I said, man, you must be new in Durham. So he said, why you say that? I said, because I said, everybody and their mama know my husband. And so he got everything. And so I went out on the porch and just looking. So soon another officer pulled up that I knew. So he got out of his car, and For a long time, it was like a broken record in my head. I could see it. My house sits up on a hill, so he was coming up the steps, and he put his foot up on the last step, and his radio went off, and he said, "Hey, Miss Sprinkler, I'll be right back." And he went out, and he sat in his car for a long time, and he came back, and he said, "Miss Sprinkler, I'm sorry, he's deceased." I said, "What are you talking about, deceased?" And he said, "I'm sorry, he's dead." So I said, "Where is he?" And he said, "I can't tell you." He said, somebody shot him in the head. That night, 3 boys were charged with shooting my husband in the head and robbing him. And he said, "They don't want you over at the crime scene." So I said, "That's okay. You just get off my porch because I know how to find him, So we had scanners and stuff. So I called somebody I knew in program. I called one of the girls and her husband. So I sent some that way looking and some this way looking. And so when the trials came up, I had to attend all 3 of the trials. I would still go to my meetings because I had nowhere else to go. That was, people in programs stayed with me, so I would not feel like I was in the house by myself. I remember I walked into an AA meeting, and one friend told me, he said, "Harriet, when it gets too heavy for you, give it to me, and I'll carry it for a little while." I know, and he knew too that was totally impossible for him to do, but the fact that he was willing to do that. People will look at me and they say, "You call yourself a Christian, you're supposed to forgive him." And I'm standing there thinking, "Look, you need to walk in my shoes for just a little bit. Then you come back, we'll have this conversation." But I didn't. I could say it with my mouth that I forgave. I did not feel it in my heart. When trials came down, one boy had asked the DA, could he write me a letter? So she called me. She said, "Harriet said, will you accept the letter from him?" I said, "Yes." So he asked me, he said, "Miss Sprinkler, please forgive me." He said, "I'm sitting somewhere, part of something," that he said that I knew better. He said, "If somebody had done this to my family member," he said, "I don't know." He said, "I doubt very seriously if I could have forgiven them." But he said, "I asked you, would you please forgive me?" So the day in the court, when he was sentenced, he asked the judge, said, "May I say something to her?" The judge asked me, I said, "Yes." So he turned around, he looked me straight in the eye. He said, "Miss Sprinkler, will you please forgive me?" And I said, "I would." It took time. God worked on me. But it got to the place where I could feel it in my heart. And God often speaks to me through what I read. I was getting ready to fly to Albuquerque and all that, wanting to go different places and stuff. And I know it's simply because of my living this new way of life and working the program. There's no place in the world. No, that part's not true too, because I want to go to China and I want to go to Africa. But every place else in the world that I have ever wanted to go see, God has made a way for me to step on those grounds. So when I was flying to Albuquerque, I went to the bookstore to get a book because I left a library book at the beach one time. And so I said, "I ain't going to let that happen. I'm going to have to pay for it." So the girl said, "Get that book right there. That's a good one." So I didn't know what the book was about. I got on the airplane to open the book up, and it was about this woman in church. And this drunk driver had run and crashed into her husband's car and killed her husband and her daughter. She was finding it hard to forgive. I slammed the book closed, and I said, "No, God, I don't want to deal with this right now." I had to deal with it. I couldn't jump out of the airplane and run away from it. So when I got back to Durham, I went to the bookstore and I found a card. And some of you may remember the comedian Lily Tomlin. She used to sit in front of this telephone switchboard. And so it was a teddy bear sitting in front of the switchboard, and it says, "Today I want you to know that you were the topic of conversation between me and God." And you open it up and it says, "I forgive." Of those 3 guys, only one, the one that asked me to forgive him, was the one that wrote me back and told me that I had answered a prayer that he had prayed every day of his life since he had been incarcerated. The 16-year-old is out. This one was 24 when he committed the crime. I wish I could stand. I started having these dreams. And in these dreams, I'm in church, and his name is Tony. Tony walks up to me, and he starts crying and saying, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry." So one night, always after I leave church on Sunday night, I jump in the car, zip across town to catch the end of the AA meeting. So I'm standing in the line, waiting to talk to Dr. Hannah. Somebody taps me on the shoulder, and I turn around, and I look, and this guy is standing there, and his head is down, and he said, "Ma'am, can I ask you what your name is?" I said, "You already know what it is. It's the one that killed my husband." So people say, "Were you scared? What did you do?" I said, "I did the only thing I knew to do. I put my arms around him and I hugged him." And he said, "Please forgive me." I said, "I told you, and I meant it a long time ago when I told you that I forgave you. And I said, I do forgive you. But someone in my home, not my home group, the home group in Hillsborough, he comes over to Durham all the time. His goal, he always goes to the prison camp there in Hillsborough and brings the guys out on prison passes. And he said, Harriet, he said, I didn't know it was your husband. He said, I knew he had killed somebody, been a part of killing somebody. And he said, everywhere he goes, that he tells people that he wants to spend the rest of his life trying to help the lady, if the lady would let him. And so he told me, he said, Miss Sprinkler, if you would let me, he said, I want to spend the rest of my life trying to help you. He said, because I know you're having to do without a lot of things because your husband is not there. I would get these little checks, and it always worked out. Whenever I go away on vacation or something, I can say, okay, what's going to be in the mailbox when I get home? So either it's something from the parole board about one of them, or there was a little check from Tony. He would send it to the courts, and courts would send me $2, $10, $20. And the most I ever got was like a $200 check when he first got out. I wish I could tell you today that Tony is in the rooms with us, but right now if he is, he's in the rooms behind locked bars because he got out and couldn't stay clean. And so I told his probation officer, I said, I really had high hopes for him, but his probation officer said, I still do. And so at that point, I changed my attitude. Instead of passing judgment on him, I still feel that he will one day get out, and hopefully, because I always felt that he would be the one of the three that would reach back and try to keep some other young man from walking down that same road, that he was on. All I can tell you tonight is that God is good to me. He is always good. I am just so thankful for this new way of life. And if you don't have a sponsor, trust me, you are selling yourself short. Because the sponsor helped me, like I said, when I could not help myself. I've got grandchildren out there. I'm a grandmother. I have 19 grandkids. I have 4 great-grandbabies. Some of my grandkids are on that path. And one of them came to a meeting with me. He was about 6, so he was going, when I was picking up a chip, he was going, Mima, what are we doing here? They've never seen me drunk. But one of my granddaughters is like 19. So I'm praying that the day will come when she will see fit, to walk through these doors, and she could one day hear somebody tell her, my grandma brought me to my first meeting because I did. She thought she was there for me just to pick up a chip, but I wanted her to see what this program was all about. I want to thank each and every one of you. If I can help in any way, Wallace has my number, and thank you so much. And all I can tell you that this program will work if you work it. Thank you.